So here, I use the Hodl model to actually make a Hodl price model, and now we get a kind of bit into the stock to flow territory, which I have not heavily promoted this model because of that reason, because I don't want to be a next stock to flow model in any sense or way, But there are some caveats with this model as well, and I will get into them. So the interesting thing, and maybe also to differentiate between stock to flow. So stock to flow is a model based on scarcity, but it's a model based on Bitcoin's total supply. But the interesting thing about the Hodl model is that we actually look at the
daily
available supply.
And
what did we see? We saw that the available supply for trade during the last bull market was the highest it was ever been. And therefore, it's kind of an explanation for also why maybe last bull market might have been more disappointing than we expected. And also a reason why stock to flow has underperformed so much, because stock to flow is based on scarcity, but that does not hold into account the actual available supply for trade. And so in a way, the Hodl model tries to look at the available supply for trade, and
which is a much more accurate number to use. What is 1 SD?
1 standard deviation.
I mean, it literally bounces off that.
Yeah,
twice.
So I published the first version of this chart 6 months ago, and I have not even posted this update at all ever on my Twitter, because I didn't want to create a next stock to flow model.
You will, and then you'll have 1.2 million Twitter followers.
Exactly, and then the model
1.8 now.
Is it 1.8?
There are some issues with this model as well, so therefore I don't want to really pump it.
For the non-mathematically analytically minded, including myself, explain what a standard deviation is.
Yeah, so a standard deviation is we look at the price history, and we look at how far does it go away from the mean, so from the average price, so from the model line, in this case, the dark blue line, which is the model line. And then we can look at that, how far, what is the distance between the model and the price value. And so 1 standard deviation is a common term in data analytics, where we can see how far is the distance. And because it updates, if there's new data available, the average changes. And so that's what the standard deviation is.
So we should approach 100K around the 4th halving,
according to this model. But I do want to, I do want to say it's not my.
Come on, say it. You can have your disclaimer.
Root says it's.
I will definitely have a disclaimer. Yeah, no. So the thing, and that's the next interesting thing to get into is one of the more famous charts, which is a relatively conservative chart, is just the log growth curve.
Yeah,
you have seen that many times, I suppose. And so the difference between this chart and the log growth curve chart is that this chart actually starts similar. So before the inflection point, it actually starts just like a log growth curve chart. But then at the inflection point, it kind of it starts to slowly go up. So actually, the rate of growth is the lowest at the inflection point for the model, and that's because this is an inverse S curve. So the adoption of Bitcoin goes in an inverse S curve. So we tend to go up. There are several reasons why why this inverse S curve is a logical adoption pattern. One is because the dollar will eventually hyperinflate. So it's not so much because the Bitcoin is going to gain more value. But
you think that's inevitable?
Eventually, it's the destination of every fiat currency, right? But another reason to make this inverse S curve to go up is scarcity, like digital scarcity. But the problem, and that's also the problem with this chart, and perhaps why it's too bullish, and it's also one of the reasons why I have not really been promoting it much, is because a growing market cap is a reason why we would get a log growth curve. So there's actually forces that are at play. So a growing market cap means basically that we need more money to move Bitcoin. If the Bitcoin price increases, you need more money to move the price each time. So that's a force, like a downwards force, right? So and that's what we have kind of experienced since 2010. Volatility has been decreasing kind of, but also we have diminishing returns, right? And that's because of this force, like a growing market cap. So we have this downward pressure on Bitcoin because the market cap is growing. It's harder to move the price. So that's why we have less gains in each cycle.
But could this get more volatile again as the supply, the daily liquid supply decreases? Yeah, there's an increase in demand.
So that's the theory of that's basically the hypothesis of the Hodl model, is that because scarcity will increase again, Bitcoin will again become more volatile in the future. And maybe a good analogy here is so imagine you are a creature and you only live 1 year, and you start on the 1st of January of that year.
You go fucking mental.
Yeah,
you go partying, get pissed, and then you're wrecked. You need to calm down.
Yeah.
And then as you approach the end of your life, you're like, fuck it, I'm going to go for it again.
Yeah, that's a good analogy as well.
Is that what you're basically?
It's not the one I was going for, but
that's what Daddy was thinking about.
So no, if you start on the 1st of January and then you start measuring the length of each day, then by the time you get to the summer, you kind of made this theory, right? Days are lengthening, right? So we have diminishing returns. Days are lengthening, because it's an observable pattern. But and that's looking at Bitcoin's price history, practically from the third halving and back. If you look back, you could look at it as this year, or this half a year, the 6 months, the past 6 months, we have lengthening days. But then you get to the summer and you get to the longest day, and we get this reversal, right? Scarcity is Bitcoin, the available supply is decreasing. Suddenly this trend reversal that we just talked about in the Hodl model. And so suddenly days are shortening, and then, so the problem with the log growth curve, this model, which is obviously it's a conservative model, so in that way it's a better model, because if you're wrong to the upside, it's not as bad as being wrong to the downside, right?
Oh well, I'm only slightly richer. I prefer. I mean, your analogy is obviously better than mine.
Yeah. So
yeah. Shut up, dickhead.
Yeah, so that's the idea with the Hodl price model. Now, so we talked about these pressures. So the thing that's not accounted for in the log growth curve is actually digital scarcity increasing, right? So if we get less available supply and more upside because of it, that's not kind of accounted for in a normal log growth curve. Now, the problem with this model is that we actually look at we account for the digital scarcity going up, but we don't account so much for the increase in available supply, the increase in market cap, I mean. So it's, so therefore, perhaps it's too bullish, that's why I'm kind of careful with promoting it.
I understand that as well. You don't want to be, this is very good data, but you don't want to live and die by it.
No.
So here's a model. If it works, let's test it.
I put this out as an hypothesis rather than a predictive model. And the thing is, I don't want to generate the next stock to flow. And Twitter is always black and white, as you know. If I put this model out and I would put it out a couple of times, people would say that Root said the price is going to 100K by the next halving, right?
That's the title. That's the title of the next show.
Exactly. And so the problem there is that this is just a hypothesis. This is one model. We never should live by one model only.
My tip for you on that would be is if you put out the model and it doesn't work or it fails, say the model's failed, don't try and keep breathing life into that model. And
for now it has kept up with the standard deviation and we've kind of bounced off it, so that's kind of bullish. But I do think there's really this potential that it's perhaps too bullish, in the sense that we don't account enough for the growing market gap. So perhaps the best model out there.
I mean, hold on, because you're saying by 2028, worst case scenario, that looks about 250K. Best case, we're over 1 million, maybe 1.1 million. Whew.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, if available supply keeps shrinking, perhaps, I'm not saying it will happen, but
do you know what these charts?
We do see a trend reversal.
These charts also miss purchasing power of those dollars.
Yeah, well, that's actually, so the purchasing power of the dollar is one reason also why we we would go up faster, right? So that is actually one of the forces as well, which kind of helps this model, give reasonable predictions. But so there is two forces to go up. One is the inflation it's just inflation in the dollar. So the dollar value goes down, and therefore the inverse, S curve, it will go up steeper. The other one is digital scarcity, but the downwards pressure is the increase in market cap.
Danny, what's my new bet with Hodl?
Do you have one?
Yeah, we did one on that last show. It was something like he thought Bitcoin would go to like 1 million within a decade.
Was that it? I can't remember.
Because I'm fucked if that's right.
You are fucked.
It's your
Presumably, though, on like the purchasing power of the dollar, this chart will only take into account like previous inflation. It's not going to be taking into account any kind of hyperinflation, is it?
Well, I mean, so it's an asymmetric inverse S curve, which is quite difficult to explain. But the first 10 years, we curved kind of to the flattest point, which is the inflection point, which is the third halving. That at that point, the growth rate of the model is the lowest, but the curve upwards is actually taking 4 times as long, right? And that is because of the trend. I mean, we try to get the best fit possible, and it's actually based on the Hodl model. Yeah. So when is a liquid supply approaching this 100% of the total supply? And that's like in 2088 or something, predicting, like the Hodl model predicts that, that is then approaching.
Well, the 2088 will be dead.
Yeah, probably.
It's fucking bullshit.
I might not be.
Dude, you will be. Hold on. 88. You'll be like 95 or something. Hold on, when were you born?
Rich as fuck.
Yeah, but no one will care. You'll be that rich old dude that no one visits.